Hi, welcome to this week's Bowling in the Years. This week we're going to look at 2010, and this is as a request to the O'Donoghue family who asked us to do this one. So we'll have some mention of the O'Donoghue family at some point.
Now 2010, that was a big year for Killian Kingston.
Certainly was a big year for Killian Kingston. At the start of the year, I suppose, he was the under-18 champion. He'd been beaten in the 2009 All-Ireland final by Thomas Mackle. And so he was under-18, but he also played Junior A. And he won the East Cork Junior A Championship, beating PJ Cooney in the final. And that was a very competitive championship. And then he went on to win the Munster Junior A against Brian Wilmot in a famous score in Newcestown. And that was a super score, because Brian Wilmot is a top class player, was then and is now a top class player. And at different stages in that contest, Killian looked to be taking control, but and especially a few shots around Desmond's lane, he did very, very well, and he looked to be pulling away. But then Brian Wilmot came back into it, and then there was a kind of a major turning point, or potential turning point in the score, where Brian Wilmot got a great shot out towards Brian's cross, and it was a simple shot out for him next. Now, if Killian Kingston missed out, the score was level. And he was back a long ways, actually. And he was an under-18 player, a big occasion, but he produced a huge bowl. And he went out to Brian's cross, which effectively gave him a shot of odds, a bowl of odds. And then he followed up with another big one down the hill. And he won it. But I suppose what's significant about that win was that he was an under-18 player. He'd beaten Vincent Kiley the week before in the Munster semi-final in Whitechurch. And again, he had finished very strongly against Vincent Kiley. But even more so, he had just come off a defeat in the Munster under-18 final in Killarney. And here Raymond Ryan had beaten him. And I suppose at the time, I wouldn't have known a lot about Raymond Ryan. We knew who he was, I suppose, at some level. But on the occasion, I think Raymond Ryan was on fire. He bowled very, very well, and he was always in control against Killian. And it was a bad old night, you know, it was raining, and Killian was a little bit flat, but I think even if he'd been at his best, he would have been really challenged by Raymond Ryan that night. Raymond Ryan was on his toes, he was flying, he bowled very, very well. He really impressed me in that night, and he's a player, I think, that has huge potential as well, and maybe we haven't seen all that he's capable of, but that's the case anyway. But then Killian went on to the All-Ireland final, and this was in Tassa, and that was an interesting final, because the first half of the final, Killian Donnelly really took the contest to him, and then there's a place called McGuigan's Height, and Killian threw this incredible bowl up over the height, but the ball was coming up the road and a tractor and trailer drove out of the field. I was there saying, oh my God, it's going to stop the ball. But the ball went under the trailer. I don't think the guy in the tractor and trailer saw anything. And it went on way up to McCann's. And then he followed another big shot down to the Carnival Gates, they call it. And he got a third one over to McKee's wall, and that wrapped up the score for him. But I think if the ball had been hit by the tractor and trailer, that probably would have put the kibosh on the whole thing. And also that year, he won the Moores gold medal, world gold medal in Holland. So all in all, it was a huge year for him, and he got the Player of the Year award that year. And I think he was actually the youngest player ever to win a Junior A All-Ireland. He was still under 18. And he didn't do his leaving cert till the following year. That'll tell you how young he was. So that was a fantastic achievement for him. And probably one of the great achievements of any player, anytime, you know, because the Junior A Championship is such a competitive championship as well.
It was a big year for Martin Coppinger as well. It
was. Martin Coppinger, I suppose, had been kind of knocking on the door all the years. And that was the year he made the big breakthrough. He won the Munster final, the Munster Senior final, in Sally's Cross against James O'Donovan. I suppose James O'Donovan must think that Sally's Cross is a very unlucky road for him, because in 2009 he lost the intermediate final to Willie O'Donovan, and here he lost the senior final on the same road to Martin Coppinger. But Martin Coppinger was, you know, just so good that night against him. It's a big stake as well. I think it was 32,000 to side or in total in that. But the other thing was that it was the first time a Bantry player had won the Munster title since the very first one. And in the very first one, actually, was Liam O'Keefe, who's actually from Waterfall, the same place that McBarry's from, won it in '54. But he was representing Bantry because he was working in a hotel in Bantry at the time. So it was 56 years of a gap that Martin Coppinger bridged there. And then he went on and he won the All-Ireland on the same road against Eddie Carr. And again that day he was super, very, very, very powerful. Big win for him.
And what happened to the King and Queen of the Roads in 2010?
Yeah, King and Queen of the Roads. David Murphy won the King of the Roads. And the thing that was interesting about the King of the Roads, he was kind of in control in the final against James Buckley. But then James Buckley got this massive shot out towards the big corner. And he looked as if he was coming back into it. But David Murphy threw the 4 most amazing last shots. And I suppose this really showed the class of the guy, the talent he had. Because in the first ball up the short straight, he had to whip it up and pull it around the right-hand bend. And the very next one, he had to pull around the left-hand bend. So he did both of those, and then he went way up what we call past the elbow. But incredibly, he beat the line from there. So there were 4 just magical shots, and I suppose they're kinds of shots you remember for the rest of your life. So that was him. And in the Queen of the Roads, Kelly Mallon won the Queen of the Roads, and she'd also won the All-Ireland. And that was a big weekend for Kelly Mallon because she beat Silke Tulk in the semi-final on the Friday, and Silke Tulk was the champion from the year before. And then in the final, she beat Carmel Ryan, and she beat Carmel as well in the All-Ireland final. So that was she 2 big wins against Carmel that year. And I suppose that's Carmel's kind of home road. So, you know, that was an added thing. But yeah, so that we were beginning to see, I suppose, how great Kelly Mallon was back then, you know, in 2010.
Yeah. And the 2010 All-Irelands, they were in Waterford, I think? Yeah,
the 3rd All-Ireland series was in Waterford, in Clashmore. And I think, I suppose, that was an important occasion because West Waterford is a real traditional bowling stronghold, and Michael Cusack, one of the founders of the GAA, spoke a lot about bowlers in West Waterford, around Dungarvan and so on and so forth. And Clashmore is a real stronghold of it, and Clashmore is a beautiful place. It's a really, you know, it's just on the other side of the Blackwater River, and you know, beautiful hillsides, and just fantastic views on the road. So it was a really great occasion. I'm just remembering Aidan Desmond won a huge Novice 1 final against a guy called Kevin Coughlin, I think. And I think they both beat the line in 11 shots. And then in the Adrian Lappin, and we've mentioned Adrian Lappin before, he won the Junior C final against Alan Long. Alan Long is from the city, but he plays through Drogheda. But God, Alan Long led from start to finish. But Adrian Lappin got 2 massive last bowls, and he didn't lead with the second last one, but then he threw this huge last bowl, and it was just unbeatable, you know. So that was the other things I remember. But it was a big occasion for Clashmore, and it was important that they were held there. And there's also another connection with Clashmore from 2010. Although he's not from Clashmore, he is a Waterford man, and that's Billy Dalton. Billy Dalton's from Lacaro, which is in West Waterford as well, and he was the first Waterford player to ever win a Junior B Munster title, and he got to the All-Ireland final, and Seamus McKee beat him in the All-Ireland final in Sally's Cross. But Seamus McKee is a big player, you know, as well, and I don't think Billy that wasn't his best day, to be honest, that All-Ireland final. But it was an important, I suppose there were 2 hugely important things for Waterford bowling that year.
At the beginning of the video, you mentioned that we chose this year because of a request from the O'Donoghue family. What was the request? The
request was from around Paddy O'Donoghue. Paddy won the All-Ireland Intermediate final that year against Conor McGuigan in Tassa, and that was a big win for Paddy, because that was a tough contest. They both led at different times, and Conor McGuigan's a really good player. Conor McGuigan is one of those players that, you know, really top class player. He beat David Murphy. That will tell you, you know, how good a player he is. Paddy seemed to be in control, and then Conor kind of came good from the bridge up the hill. And to be honest, we thought the Cork supporters thought the line would never come in that score. But we were coming up, but Paddy was handball for the last shot, and he threw a magical last ball. And, you know, he really won that one, like he pulled it out of the bag. But Paddy's a super player, like got a huge bowling ability, and, you know, he bowled very well in that final. Yeah, he was a really good player. And of course, his nephew Michael, he's a really top class player now, and I think Michael is going to be a future senior. You know, he's got real talent, real bowling, you know. So that's a family, I suppose, has contributed a huge amount to bowling. And it's nice to see going to the next generation. And Michael is a super guy, you know. I remember him bowling in Ballincorrig when he was 10 years of age or something, like throwing back the balls, and he's really turned into a great player, you know. And he's a young lad, he's only 18 or 19. Yeah. And
so speaking of families, we also have, I think, another kind of sibling.
Yeah, we have Ethan and Colin Rafferty won the under-16 and under-14 All-Irelands. I think Ethan won his one in Sally's Cross, and Colin won the under-14 then in Tassa against Damien O'Gorman, as far as I remember. But the thing about Ethan as well, Ethan, like Kelly Mallon, played inter-county football at senior level for their county, for Armagh, both Kelly and Ethan. And Ethan played under-21 with Armagh as well. And he's a nephew of Michael Toll, so I suppose there's a big connection there. And you know, a super great player. And Colin is a super player. He's played in the King of the Roads, and he's a really good player as well. Yeah, so a lot of talent there with those two.
I believe there was a bowling book published.
Yeah, there was a great book by Charlie Madden, and Charlie was originally from Upton, but he had a pub in Timoleague, so he moved to Timoleague. And Charlie was, like, I suppose, one of those kind of authorities on bowling. You know, you could ask Charlie anything about bowling and he would know about it. And he was deeply interested in it. You know, he was interested in the level of sort of not just a fan, not just, you know, backing people, but just understanding the sport and following the sport and loving the sport. And he did his most incredible book where he contacted all the parishes in West Cork, and he got them to contribute something about the bowling in their areas. And I think historically that was a really important thing to do. And that came out in 2010, so that was a big part of 2010.
What was the book called?
Lest We Forget. And I think you can get it online. It's available online.
Very nice. And was there anything else that you remember? I think you wanted to talk about Tate Murphy.
Yeah, Tate Murphy won the vintage, and we mentioned Juliet before. He's Juliet's uncle. Pat Mallon won the veterans. He beat Mick Young. And I suppose that just continued an incredible record for Pat Mallon of beating fancied Cork players. Because Mick, I think at the time, yeah, he was the All-Ireland champion at the time, so that was a big win. And Mick Young was a really top player, so that was a big scalp for Pat Mallon. And we try not to do a video without mentioning Greta. So Greta's niece won an All-Ireland that year, Lisa Hegarty, and Greta, I presume, was the sort of brains behind the operation. So I think they were the main things from 2010. We didn't mention the World Championships in Holland, but we just don't really have time to go into too much detail. And there's lots of other things we could have mentioned, but I think they're the main highlights for me anyway.
Sure, if people want us to start doing an hour-long podcast, they can let us know.
Yeah, we've already one request for the hour-long podcast. Finding the hour to do it is going to be the problem.
Yeah, finding more than one person might also be a bit of a problem.
Yes.
But yeah, so that's 2010, and of course we did that based on a request. We love getting the requests.
Yeah, so, and I think I think a few other people have mentioned a few other ones. Some of them are pretty old ones, and it's kind of harder for us to get the documentation and, you know, so on and so forth.
When did you start writing your column?
I started in 1988. You know, so it's probably easier for me to remember those ones because you have to kind of remember them in a bit more detail. Whereas if you're going just as a casual fan, you probably don't note them as much.
So if anyone has any requests, as always, we encourage you to let us know. And thank you so much for watching us and for supporting the channel.
Absolutely. We love all the support we're getting. Thank you very much.